How good are you at setting really clear boundaries with your clients? Is this something that you're absolutely hot on so that your clients are incredibly easy to manage and fabulously well behaved? Or are they all that little bit unruly because you are a bit too hesitant to set boundaries? Now, what I often see is that people resist setting boundaries because they don't want to come across as too bossy or too demanding. And they want to be super helpful and constantly supported. But what that often leads to is those lack of boundaries, instead of helping you to be incredibly supportive and massively valuable to your clients, they actually mean that you end up turning into a doormat. And the more and more and more you do, the less and less appreciated you feel by your clients. Now, there's a couple of key things to bear in mind here. One of them is that the boundaries between you and your client in terms of how you work and what they should expect, those boundaries are your responsibility. Clients themselves can't be expected to assume them or apply common sense. That is simply not the way of the world. If you think about it, I often talk about this relationship between client and customer, not client and customer, supplier and customer even, it's a little bit like a parent and child relationship. And you as the supplier are the parent, the client is the customer. It's kind of their job to test your boundaries. They are the naughty child in this situation, and you have to be the parent and clarify the rules for them, because they are not going to do that themselves and they are going to keep pushing otherwise. So what boundaries actually do is that they show that you are professional, you are assertive, and you are incredibly well organised. They are great for maintaining respect with your customers. What they do is make sure that your relationship with that client remains a really strong partnership, rather than the customer somehow becoming the boss and you becoming the person that is just bossed around and feeling undervalued. So what kind of boundaries could you or should you set in your business with your customers? Well, the first thing to actually let customers know is when you're available, and sometimes how much you are available. So if you've got a client that expects you to be available 24/7, I'm pretty sure that's not how you plan to run your business. So letting clients know when you are available is absolutely key. And that also means you sticking to your own boundaries. So if you tell a client that you're not available after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, don't respond to messages or reply to emails after that time, because anything you do tells the client that that's okay. So as soon as you start replying to emails at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, you tell the client it's okay for you to contact me then. So step one is set really clear boundaries about when you're available and perhaps about how much you are available. Step two is making it really clear what is included and what's not included in the client's contract with you. Now, obviously, that does suggest that you have to have a contract. Definitely would advise that if you don't have anything. But make sure it's really clear what is involved. Also bear in mind, though, that customers won't remember what they've signed up for. You've had all these conversations and emails and various different bits and pieces. They're not likely to remember the specifics. So don't assume that they know exactly what they get because it's in the contract or in your terms. Do take the opportunity to reiterate that for them. And if you find that you're getting into a situation that you might call scope creep, where you're starting to do more for them, you're not quite sure how because you just did that little bit extra and a little bit extra, and before you know it, it's miles. When you feel like you're delivering far too much for what the client is paying for, ideally then just say to them, this is outside of scope, there will be an extra charge. If you feel really hesitant about that, then you can always say to them, look, this is outside the scope of the contract that we have. I will do it for you this time, but next time there will be an extra charge. Then you're setting the boundaries for next time round. Make it super clear what is your responsibility and what is the client's responsibility. It's very easy for you to gradually just take on a little bit extra, a little bit extra, and a little bit extra. And again, when you do that, you are educating the client that actually that responsibility now sits with you. Happy days. The client needs to do less and you just keep on taking more. So this is where you kind of get involved with a bit extra because it's going to make the project simpler, or you just start to do more than you're supposed to because it's going to smooth the path in the future, or because you just make a choice to add a bit more value. But if you're not clarifying that, the customer is completely unaware and now they think that's the new boundary. Number 4 is be super clear about when you will complete things for the client and also what their deliverables are for you. So if you need certain things from them and if you have deadlines in mind, you need to make those things super clear. It's very easy for a piece of work to drift, and it's drifted because the client hasn't given you what you need. But the client will always turn around and look at you and say, well, you said you'd have this done by such a date and you haven't. Whereas if you've gone back to them early on and said, I will deliver this for you by this date, but I can only do that if you deliver this for me by this date. And if they don't do that, then you need to remind them of boundaries and deadlines. So it's really clear what they need to do in order for you to deliver your part. And it doesn't mean that the client looks at you as having sole responsibility if deadlines aren't met or deliverables aren't quite as expected. And then last of all is payment terms. Make sure that your client absolutely understands the payment terms, that there is no grey area at all around that. Be very clear about what point you will stop working or you'll pull a project if they are not paying you on time. But don't allow that kind of situation to run and to escalate, because again, you're just setting those boundaries, or you're setting the lack of boundaries to say it's acceptable to be late and to just sort of rack up a bill and we'll worry about it later. That is not a situation that you want to be in. So if you know that your boundaries with clients are somewhat wishy-washy, and you could do with a bit of help to be more assertive, stronger with those boundaries, and actually have much clearer processes around that in place, this is where my one-to-one coaching can be uber helpful. You can have a nosy on my website if you go to tailory.com and have a look at one-to-one business coaching, or just drop me a message and let's have a chat.